So just a few weeks ago, I got back from Iceland and I noticed when I put my photos on the computer, they looked a little bit flat. I don't know if you've ever felt that way before about your photos, but it's almost like there was a disconnect between the time you took the photo and the time your camera actually registered the photo to the memory card. Something was lost in translation. The photos look flat. They don't look as vibrant or exciting as they did when you were actually there. Well, that happened to me too, and I found a few things that I could do in Lightroom that kind of brought them back to life, and I think it's going to do a lot for your photography too. Now, when a photo's flat, you really want to bring out more contrast. It means there's a lot of information living in the midtones or the middle of the photo, kind of those middle highlights and shadows that you want to stretch out into some brighter highlights or darker shadows. Now, here's the photo that I'm editing today. This is from Vesterhorn. I'm just going to do a quick little adjustment with the horizon line, but here you can see a lot of that information up here in the histogram in the top right portion of your screen is kind of living in that mid zone. We do have a peak over here in the highlights and the whites where all those clouds are, but I can easily just bring those down. Now with the tone curve, I usually opt for going with sliders, but I found that with the tone curve, you do get a little bit more of a pop of contrast and you're able to stretch those highlights and shadows a little bit more. Your classic tone curve is, for contrast, is more of like an S curve. But since I have a lot of information pulled up there in the highlights of the photo, I don't want to do too much with the tone curve here. You're seeing we're getting a lot of contrast that's over here in the photo. I don't want to lose too much in here. Now, one of the things you do is hit the J key on your keyboard, and when you lift that up too high, you can see those clouds turning red. That means that they are actually clipped or that you have no more information in there, and vice versa with the blacks, they turn blue, that you have no more information in there either. But just with a little tone curve adjustment, you get some differences in some of the highlights and the shadows. Now I like to clean that up just a little bit with the sliders up here. With my highlights, I'll just drop those a good amount. And my whites, I'll drop those down a good amount too. I think my blacks and my shadows are really good where they are. This is something you can use in your photography when you see some of those mid-toned kind of photos. The photo looks a little bit flat and you can try to stretch out that histogram like that using tone curves and sliders. Use them together because all these edits in Lightroom are made to be used together. Next is probably one of my favorite tools, and if you're not using the color mixer tool yet, you definitely should be. All you have to do is click this little dropper button right here and you can hover over any part of the photo that you want to and select a color. Let's select these blue skies because the sky was a lot more blue than this, and I can just increase that saturation. You can see I can go crazy with this. I don't want to go that crazy. I want to make it more realistic, but it was pretty blue that day, so I am going to increase the saturation there and also increase the luminance just slightly to make that kind of glow and pop, that blue color come out just a little bit more. Now with the color mixer tool, one of the things that you can do here is actually visualize the range. So if you can't necessarily see where those blues are coming in, you click visualize range and it turns everything black and white except for the specific color that you're selecting. You can also adjust the range of how much of that color you want to show up. I try to keep it around 50 unless I'm going for an exact color. Let's select out some of these yellows and greens down in the grasses here too. I can go to visualize range here and you can see that with the visualize range, and this is why I always like to select it right at the beginning, because I can see I'm also editing some of the mosses and grasses that were growing up on Vesterhorn Mountain. So now I know I'm doing that. Maybe if I did the range just a little bit, I could reduce how much I was editing of those or increase it as well. It's just up to you on how much you want to limit that as a photographer. So increase the saturation just a little bit. And I'm actually going to drop the luminance on that because they were so bright, just reflecting all of that light in the sky. We've already made so much progress on this, and these are tips that you can use too in all of your photos as well. I've come to love them and appreciate them for my landscape photography. Now, those were all global adjustments, editing the entire photo. We're doing masking next, and we're making some very specific edits here. Now, when I say masking, I don't want you to get scared. Masking has become so easy to use and do in Lightroom with recent years, and follow along because these are ways that you can add it to your own photo, I'm gonna judiciously use some clarity in my photo. So I'm gonna create a new mask here. I created a brush mask. So this makes this little plus icon come up. And as I paint in, I'm gonna deselect show overlay. I'm just gonna paint in on this mountain out here because it was so far away. I want to adjust the clarity and contrast on that just a little bit, maybe even a little bit of texture. So that increased clarity, you can see a lot of those highlights and shadows start to separate out. And that's just because clarity is adding a little bit of impact when it comes to the pixels in your photo. It's separating out highlights and shadows more, and it's adding just a touch of texture to your image as well. I can also increase the texture if I wanted to make those jagged peaks come out a little bit more. Now with this, I'm also going to create a new mask with my brush, and I'm going to do another clarity adjustment, but I'm going to reduce the clarity down at the bottom of the photo just because that's going to lead into something else we're going to be using just a little bit later. So all these little shadowed areas of grasses, I'm just going to paint in, and then I'm actually going to drop the clarity just a little on those grasses and also drop the texture just a little because I want all your attention going to the mountains. Remember, in photography, you want all the attention to go to your actual subject and kind of distract from the complementary subjects or other objects that you're adding into the composition too. Now I'm really big on adjusting skies, so I'm going to create a new mask and just go to select sky, and it's going to select out that sky. Remember, Lightroom masking has gotten so good in the past few years that you can easily just select the sky and it will select the sky. It used to not do this very well, and it used to cause some really interesting haloing on the top of your subjects. Just watch for that if you're concerned about that at all. So with the sky, what I'm going to do is actually play around with the contrast in the sky, and I'm also going to play around with the highlights of the clouds and the shadows around the clouds. What I'm trying to do here is make the edges of those clouds a little bit more pronounced and bring out some of that blue color in the sky as well. And I think just with a couple sliders, I did just that. Now, a lot of tips out there would say, hey, slap on a vignette on this photo and you'll be done. But I don't want to do that here. I want to be very judicious about where I'm putting vignettes in because I don't want to darken any parts of the sky that I just spent so long working on and editing. I want to be really judicious about where the darkening is occurring and how I can pull the viewer into the frame. So don't always just go straight to the vignette. What you can do is create another mask, use a brush mask, and you'll just come into the frame. I'm going to use a really big brush here, and I'm just going to paint the corners of the bottom of the photo and the same kind of areas that we painted in where we reduced the contrast in some of those grasses down here. So I'm just going to paint in the very bottom of the photo in these corners. Here is what that mask looks like. If we can view the mask right there. So that's what that mask looks like. And we're just going to darken those areas of the photo. So I'm just going to reduce the shadows in those spots just to darken it slightly and reduce it down. I don't want to go until it is clipped and blue, but I do want to do it enough to where it's darkened. So let's look at the before and after here and see exactly what we were able to create. If I go to before and after, you can see how flat the original photo looked and how dynamic and impactful the second photo looks. But imagine what you could do with more of these tips for your photography. Inside of my courses at Landscape Photography University, that link is below in the video description and the pinned comment. We teach you how to take these skills and apply them to your own photos so that you can level up your photography as well. We're running a sale right now. If you want to check out that link, I'm sure that it would really improve your photography. We also do live photo critiques and editing here on this channel every single Friday at 2:15 p.m. Central Time. So if you want to improve your photography, this is where you want to be. Go ahead and check those two things out and be on the lookout for our live streams of our photo edits.